Is Will Muschamp in his final spring at South Carolina? Some of you may have seen the YouTube channel here at 24/7 Sports. I did a video about this the other day, and I kind of wanted to rehash and then offer up some things that we've heard, some of the hoofbeats that we've heard from Columbia, and how this may impact the entire SEC Eastern Division and beyond. Last year, there was a lot of hot seat talk around Will Muschamp, and I thought it was laughable, and I was on record as saying that. I didn't think at any point last year Will Muschamp's job was in jeopardy. I didn't think it was on the line at any point, and that is including a sometimes hideous up and down campaign, offensive inconsistency, quarterback was inconsistent, injuries were again the story for South Carolina football. But what that did was it burned up all the equity. And so you had the brand new $60 million facility over there that Will Muschamp was heavily involved in designing and building and fundraising. And so that's important. That goes a long way with very deep-pocketed people. What doesn't go a long way is sitting at home in December while, everyone else in the sport is playing a bowl game. And so now we enter 2020. And what you guys were saying, a lot of you at least in 2019, I agree with. I think it very well could be his final spring. I don't root for this because, see, unlike some people, I like Will Muschamp. He doesn't text me 4 or 5 times a day, but I like Will Muschamp. So I'm going to admittedly say I hope I'm wrong here, and this is certainly no prediction that he's getting fired. But what I do think is I think the hot seat talk is very real, and I think that he was given an opportunity to make some changes in the offseason. Most notably, at least publicly, offensive coordinator is now Mike Bobo. And I got some questions about that, and I'll touch on that in a second. They've already opened spring, by the way, and there is one really notable sort of overarching piece of information that's come out of spring ball at South Carolina that I think, you want to talk metaphorical speaking, I'll give you one to chew on in a second. But new strength and conditioning coach in place, new offensive coordinator, again, allegedly a new offense. You've got moving pieces all over the place. I know that Hale McGranahan, a lot of the guys over at the Big Spur have been talking about how a ton of guys that are going to be counted on to be key contributors, skill guys. Now, offensively, when I say skill guys, you know who I mean. It takes a lot of skill to play offensive line, but I'm not talking about O-linemen. But I'm talking about a lot of true freshmen, some of whom aren't on campus yet, guys, who are going to be counted on to ultimately, hopefully, if I'm Will Muschamp, save my job this year. How comforting to know a kid is headed to prom in a couple of months, and then I'm going to count on him to come here and hopefully bail me out and make me look like a genius. So you got the hire of Mike Bobo. You got the hire of the strength and conditioning coach. I want you to think about this because you've been there probably as recently as this morning. When you wake up, you're on a tight schedule in the morning, and you head out the door, and you get in the car, and you just go. And you got very few minutes, precious few minutes, to get to work and get where you need to be. And what you're doing is you're driving down the road, and you're asking yourself, did I remember everything? This is the point of no return. This is that point where you can't go back. You don't have time to go back. So if the answer is, no, I didn't remember everything, you're just screwed. Well, that's got to be kind of how Will Muschamp feels right now because he's got a new offensive coordinator, got a new strength and conditioning coach. It would take too long, guys. We don't want to do an hour and a half show. It would take too long for me to list all the new about this program. And the least of which being the question that, again, we won't get answered in spring. And that question being, is this really going to be Mike Bobo's offense, or is it going to be just Mike Bobo running the Will Muschamp offense? See, when you talk about Ed Orgeron at LSU, what was key about the overnight turnaround for LSU last year is Orgeron hired the right guys and got out of the way. Question one, is Mike Bobo the right guy? Question number two is, if he is the head man willing to get out of the way? I know that's easier said than done. I know when when it's your job on the line, talked about this with Malzahn, when your job's on the line, you want to go down firing the bullets you want to fire instead of sitting back with your arms crossed and watching someone else call the shots. Unfortunately, that's led to the demise of many a head coach. It could most recently, or in the future at least, be happening in Columbia. But having said all that, in order for them to arrive at their destination, which I think has to be 8 wins, 7 wins and 8 wins, I think is a massive line in the sand for them this year. In order for them to get there, all this stuff has to click immediately. You've seen Carolina's schedule. It's like this every year. All this stuff has to fall into place. They don't get 3 or 4 or 5 weeks. You gotta be humming by October. I mean, number one, if they had the injuries they've had, they're screwed to begin with. But number two, they don't have time for their offense to gel or click. And I don't even think it's realistic to expect it to be that way. When not only are you talking about new coaches all over the place, philosophically changing, but you got a critical mass of kids who aren't even on campus yet. They're going to be asked to contribute. And I checked Carolina's most recent recruiting class, and while it was solid, and I've kind of secretly admired the job that they've done incrementally getting better in recruiting, I didn't see Julio and A.J. Green in that last recruiting class. So I don't necessarily know that guys are going to come in here like George Pickens for Georgia last year, Calvin Ridley or Amari Cooper in recent years for Alabama, and just pop out of nowhere. That's what they have to have happen. So Carolina is flying by the seat of their pants, and to me, they are the most interesting program to watch, maybe Carolina and Texas A&M this year in the entire SEC because of that. Just some things that we're watching.